Soma, good to see you as always, and I'm glad you've made it. I know you've just been stuck on a train, so I'm really glad that to see you in front of me on in the Zoom room. So thank you for making a bit of time. Um, just to kick off this conversation, I mean, tell me about the moment when you thought I can turn ETA technologies into a global business. I mean, tell us about that moment and how that felt, and how did that come about?
Well, Paul, first of all, thank you very, very much for having me today. And yes, I had some issues with the travel and the train. It's so sweet, sweet irony that, we are in a tech innovative podcast, but, we can't do such an easy thing as transporting people from London to Cambridge. But anyway, when was the moment when I realized that, ETA technologies can be a global business? So actually, it was 2021 when I was sitting in the venture capital chair. Because just in a nutshell, those who probably missed the previous episode, so what ETA Technologies is doing. And basically, there is an age-old saying in venture capital, in fact, in startup investment, that investors invest in people. And we created the first ever psychometric AI to measure the people for
Yep.
investors so they
Yep.
can make a data-driven decision. And the moment when I had this sudden realization, this is a global business, that with the second fund where I was involved, I had the absolute privilege investing in the UK and the US market. And in both markets, people were completely obsessed with this people centric philosophy that we are investing into the people, the execution, what really matters, not the idea, and the execution is done by the team. Therefore, people, 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 people.
Yep.
However, given this is a super people focused industry, still 65% of startups went bust due to team related issues. And I was like, how on earth this is possible? This is not just a UK specific problem. This is in Silicon Valley, this is in Miami, this is in a Spanish
Yep.
ecosystem, this is in
Yep.
Germany. And I identified this problem and I assembled my own team because, that's how we start things. And well, the rest is history.
Okay. And when you realized that you could turn it into or you could have a global impact, I mean, how did you then go about making that happen? I mean, it's one thing to say, "Oh, I want my company to do stuff all around the world." It's another thing to make it happen. I mean,
Yeah.
how did you approach that? From a practical perspective, to go from an idea to an implementation.
Yeah. So ETA Technologies is definitely a business which sadly you can build, overnight. So we were in the so-called stealth mode for like 2.5 years. I have a co-founding team of, three other people working on this, two of them coming from academia. So there was a lot of planning, a lot of engineering, a lot of AI polishing, data gathering, so on and so forth. This is the boring bit. Now, the interesting bit about the internationalization of the company, I'm a big believer what Y Combinator is always saying, that start small,
Yeah.
start something that does not scale. So of course we always had a global ambition, because it doesn't matter it's China, US, or African venture capitalists. You ask them that, do you agree investors invest in people? I guarantee 9 out of 10 is going to say yes, yes, absolutely. Do you have a model, a technology, a tool which is assessing the people? No, I don't have any of that. So there is a global opportunity there. However, I think what many people make as a mistake, that they immediately jump to the global part and they start to expand in the US, start to do business in Europe, start to tackle the UK market. Now, if you are everywhere, you are nowhere in reality. So it was really important for us, especially in the first few months, that have a strong and stable presence on the UK market. Because as you can imagine, the nature of our business, referral, reputation, is
Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah.
essential. Because after all, it's a teeny tiny industry. I'm always using this example, like the mafia, that if you are in, you are in. They treat you like family. But if, as an outsider, you try to sell to them, you try to communicate to them, you will always be. They always look you as an intruder. So it was really important, in the first perhaps 6 months to have UK customers, people who are really satisfied, people who I can point as they are my champions, because there is a lot of interconnection between the UK, US, and the European market. And as soon as, we had the first, I'm just saying something, 20 funds, 20
Mm.
paying customers signed up, it was really easy to say that, hey, are you satisfied with the product? Oh, yes, I am. Would you mind referring to such and such? Oh, and by the way, would you mind referring to someone overseas? And this is how we landed the first 10 paying clients in the UK purely by referrals. So I think, my philosophy, once again, that we started small, we
Yeah.
found our product market fit in the UK market where we are located. And after we were heavily thinking about, growing big and approaching people in Europe, in US. Now, nowadays in the age of AI, I think, speed is very important.
Yeah.
However, I would highly discourage people just, jumping into things, because speed without a plan, it's a
Mm.
complete disaster. But speed and a good plan, that how you put the Lego bricks together, this is what I call
Yeah.
a proper and sustainable execution.
Yeah, and to pick up your earlier point about if you're everywhere, you're nowhere. I mean, people always say strategy is mainly about what you don't do, isn't it? It's about working out. There's hundreds of things you could do. It's working out which things you're gonna do, not doing all the other stuff that's irrelevant. Um,
Yeah, prioritization
yeah.
extremely important, extremely important.
So let me just. I mean, I can see your logic for how you thought you're going
Yeah.
to build the business. I mean, tell me about the role of the CEO. So conventional wisdom is the CEO works out what is it that the CEO needs to do, what is it that only they can do, and then they delegate everything else. Now that's the conventional wisdom. When you've got a small team, it doesn't usually work that way, does it? So tell me about your take on the role of the CEO in trying to build that global impact, but with a relatively small team.
So I think that, dependent where you are in your journey,
Mm.
pre-seed, Series A, seed, Series B, whatsoever, your role as a CEO is shifting and changing a lot.
Yeah.
In the early stage, I mean, where we are as a pre-seed company, my role as a CEO, number one, the representation. So whatsoever happens, we need to present in a conference. We are invited as a company to a panel. I need to be there, and I need to communicate a consistent narrative. This is absolutely essential for our commercial and marketing operations. I love to quote this, saying by Ted Turner, that early to bed, early to rise, work like hell, and advertise. You
Yeah.
can have the best product, the best algorithm on planet Earth. If nobody knows about it,
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
are just manufacturing something for the drawer. So, being the face of the company is extremely important. Now, as matter of fact, number two, the founder-led sales in early stage
Yeah.
is absolutely essential, and there is nothing wrong with it if you are more a technical person and you can't sell, but find the people who can. Otherwise, once again, you are just manufacturing something for a really small minority of people, and you are killing,
Yeah.
completely eliminating your scalability. So being the face of the company, for a larger audience as a marketing, and for a shorter audience, as a sales guy, this is
Mm.
absolutely essential. And number three, just, holding the company together, because in early stage, there is a lot of risk that people are quitting their job and they are committing to this idea. And everybody, hear those horror stories from the industry that still, despite the tremendous support which we have in the startup ecosystem, 90% of the companies fail. So it's a really difficult decision that, okay, I quit and I'm going to dedicate my life to this project without a salary, just purely on an equity base. And a good CEO is a person who is able to create a culture where, everybody feels home. And I deliberately say that it's not about the motivation, because motivation is very tricky. Sometimes you are motivated, and other days you are not. It's about the consistency, that every single day when you wake up, you know that what's the vision, what's the goal, what you're working for. And outsourcing, as you said, I don't think, this is the right approach, that you try to outsource everything. It's more like that if we need a technical person, I find somebody who is dedicated and invested in this company, make them a partner, and generally I create an atmosphere where everybody is interested in sharing, because
Right.
maybe I sell the product, but you as a technical co-founder equally dedicated to make this company a great success because, hey, I have such and such equity. And creating this environment, I think a lot depends on the CEO. However, my favorite example ever, that there is no like playbook that, okay, this is how to be a CEO,
No,
because
that's
everything
right. There isn't. No.
depends on the team. Just think about Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. I couldn't imagine like a more differing example. Jobs was a classic visionary, almost like a dictator. He had an agenda and he was pushing it like there is no tomorrow. Either you commit to it, or I'm just gonna remove you from the picture. Meanwhile, Gates, he had the exact opposite philosophy. He was like, I have no agenda. I just want to surround myself with really smart people, create an atmosphere where everybody feels partner, they share the idea, and together we figure out where we are going. And that's why I'm saying that there is no such thing as a wrong CEO or as a wrong team culture. It's all about fitting or not fitting, because
Yeah.
there were people who
Yeah.
were really comfortable working with Jobs, uncomfortable working with Gates, and of course vice versa. And as a CEO, you need to create this culture, you need to be consistent, and you need to find the people who are a good match with the culture you created or created together with others.
Yeah, I mean that's a very good point, actually. These things, there is no sort of playbook for doing that, is there? I mean, you've got to work it out. You've got to work out what's right for you and your business. I mean, let me pick up the point you made earlier on about holding the team together. I mean, that's a really important point. One of the other challenges about having a small team but trying to achieve a global impact is, I mean, doing business in America is very different to doing business in Germany, for example, or Spain. I mean, so you've got a
Very
small
crazy about that.
team that's got to work in multiple. I mean, how do you? I mean, how do you build a team that is effective but also sufficiently flexible to work in multiple jurisdictions? I mean, what's your take on that challenge?
So I think, this is a big challenge for entrepreneurs and large corporates as well, because after
Yeah.
the pandemic, the so-called remote work became the norm, or at least, a hybrid work became the standard. I think wherever we are, team building as an exercise, and many people, overlook it, and they say that, oh, team building, this is something which belongs to the corporate. I don't have time for this. And this is where they make a big mistake. Every single week, I dedicate a half an hour conversation to all my teammates, either physically, face to face, or virtually, remotely, via Zoom, via Teams, where we don't talk about the job, we don't talk about the company, we just talk about you. What's going on in your life? Do you have any personal challenges? Kids, family, wife, happy life, so on and so forth. Because I think it's really important that you need to understand people in order to lead them. And the company where it is going is ultimately decided by the people who are executing on a daily basis. And my absolute favorite question whenever I'm hiring people, how I can serve you, because as a CEO, my job ultimately to create an atmosphere which is serving you, serving me, and serving everybody else.
Yeah.
And it's so funny that when university, a lot of students get together, they have an idea, an app, or something, and they're moving nowhere because they are debating that I should be the CEO. No, I should be the CEO. I want to be the boss. And I'm always saying that, look, it is not a privilege. It is basically like a title that, okay, you're gonna be the person who's gonna be blamed even if we
Yeah.
are marginally not meeting with the target. So who is the person who really can serve the others? Well, then you are the CEO.
Yeah.
Simple as that. If you want this role, if you claim this title for power or for prestige, you are not a good fit for the role,
Yeah.
because it's in reality, it's really, really on a fundamental level serving other people, understanding their needs and desires, understanding the duties and responsibilities required by the collective in the company, and just putting the jigsaws together in a big puzzle piece.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a very interesting point you've made there because partly you've got a role model, not just supporting the team, but the team supporting customers. which is the next part of the equation, isn't it? Is you've got to have a team that wants to support and work with and get on with and build relationships with customers. I mean, what's your take on that process of how you keep the team engaged with customers? Because often, I mean, I know this from my own experience, engineers like to work on the engineering. Nothing wrong with that. But you've also, if you've got a small team, you've also got to deal with customers with queries and problems and all the rest of it. I mean, how do you balance? What's your take on the best way to balance those sort of challenges?
I think, before being completely like, customer obsessed, you need to be completely problem obsessed,
Yeah.
because these things like, connecting the A with the B with a direct line, and that's what I make sure that every single person who works for me on a part-time, full-time, fractional, advisory, whatever basis, that they understand the problem. Because if you understand the problem, you relate to the problem. And as such, when you need to talk to a customer, when you need to sell the product, I mean, in an early stage company, we are all champions of the technology of the company. So when you talk about it, you have this special energy that, okay, this is a real problem with a massive impact. We are building a global business, and you, Mr. Customer or Mrs. Customer, you need this because X, Y, and Z. And I think what many people get it wrong, that you need to serve the customer, you're the servant of the customer is always right, so on and so forth. Yeah, there are a couple of stuff in the playbook that the customer is always right, so on and so forth. But my philosophy that if you understand the problem, you can relate those customers,
Mm.
you can relate to their pain, and that's why you can provide much more than just a simple technology, but a couple of kind words. If they don't know how to install or how to integrate the API, you're not going to be like, oh, these people are stupid, so on and so forth. But how amazing that you belong to our family now, and we solve this problem for you. And yeah, there are a couple of minor technical challenges. Let's get down to this. Let me help you with the API, and let's get the ball rolling, because I'm solving this huge problem for you. This is
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a way of engaging with them is through the problem, isn't it, really? I
Yeah.
mean, and I can definitely see the logic to that. I mean, let me just pick up one more point about customers. I mean, my experience has been that customer expectations change quite a lot over time, and generally they only go up. I mean, my experience is they always want more, they always want better, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's okay. But again, to come back to the thing we were talking about earlier, doing business in America, very different from doing business in Spain. Customer expectations are different. I mean, what's your take on keeping track of those sorts of issues? Because, that's understanding customers and understanding their expectations pretty important.
Well, let me tell you a funny story first. That basically a couple of weeks ago, I was sitting in a panel when they asked me that how on earth we were able to just in 1 year extend in 7 European countries,
Mhm.
and I was saying that one of the biggest barriers, one of the biggest challenges in Europe, the different cultures and different languages, because we are really pushing to have a flourishing referral program where customers are referring other customers. Of course, you need to provide an absolutely exceptional customer value in order to do that, but we are absolutely on the line to build it. And in France, it was working really well. In Switzerland, it was working amazing. Spanish customers, almost each and every one of them brought another customer with themselves. But in Germany, funnily enough, relating to your example, there was absolutely no referrals. And they spent quite a significant time and money figuring out whether this is a general dissatisfaction with the product and the service on the market, or what's that. And we realized from a German distributor that in Germany, people just don't refer. Even if you are super, 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 super satisfied with something, you never do that. Hey, man, you should try this, because they have more like if I found something which is working really well, I try to keep it as close to my chest as
Okay.
physically possible
Okay.
in order to avoid giving this competitive, sustainable advantage to a potential, competitor. And this is a purely a cultural thing. Now, what I noticed, that since AI is in the picture, which we talk a lot about in the later stage of the conversation, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on this one, but people have a tendency that, are you using AI? Yeah, everybody's using AI. Okay, so it must be a massive, huge solution to all my problems. And I think that especially nowadays with AI, we are in an era where services and technologies are solving maybe a marginal problem, maybe one slice of the pie, but there is no like, okay, this is the perfect algorithm which is going to solve you everything. So expectations are evolving, and sometimes when you release a new feature or a function, people love to jump to the conclusion and saying that, oh, so you guys are doing now everything, and there is no one-stop shop for everything. There is no like the everything app. Maybe in China with the WeChat, but let's not go that
Yeah.
far. Um,
And
but
I mean, seeing as you mentioned AI, let's just follow that because,
yeah,
I mean, again, to come back to this thing about people do business in different ways in different parts of the world. I mean, AI is evolving extraordinarily quickly. I mean, is your impression that different sort of groups of customers, German people, American people, Spanish people, whatever, are they using AI in different ways? Is that rate of evolution of AI affecting how you do? I mean, give us your take on the way AI is affecting things.
oh, totally, totally. In the US, my experience is that just like 3 or 4 years ago, when blockchain was the big buzzword, even if you have a lemonade stand, it must be with blockchain. Otherwise, what are you doing with your life
Yeah.
nowadays? All the solutions, it doesn't matter. It's like a
Yeah.
teeny tiny automation. It must be AI. Otherwise, like, oh, you're not doing AI? Okay, so you're not serious. So I
Mm.
think in the US, people just have a tendency to jump on big trends and, okay, there's a new solution. It must be AI because that's the hottest topic right now. Going back to UK and Europe, I think there is a little bit more risk aversion here. So I talk to many customers who are actually like, oh, so you have an AI solution? Yes, we have an AI solution. Oh, so you guys just trying to sell me the next big thing, so on and so forth. And I was like, no, 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 hold your horses. So we are not the next ChatGPT or Perplexity AI or anything. We have an AI, you know, technology for a really specific purpose, period, which we developed in house. So it's not something what you can talk to. It's for a really specific and elaborate, pattern recognition. But that's still an AI. So I think that meanwhile in the US, the AI sounds like, okay, that's the key, which is just opening all the locks. In Europe, UK, Germany, people are a little bit like, oh, so that's more like a marketing term nowadays, how to sell your product. Um, what's interesting for me in the UK that especially in the fintech area, that there were a lot of big banks, without mentioning any specific names, who were buying those solutions, signing up, subscribing, paying the monthly, so on and so forth. And a couple of years ago, the UK government was like, okay, so AI is everywhere. We need to regulate it. And I had the absolute privilege meeting in a conference one of the leaders of these legal teams who tried to regulate it. And I talked to him and I was like, so tell me what's your biggest challenge nowadays, that you guys will be who is setting the standards for the
Yeah.
next 10 years. As an AI entrepreneur, I will be dependent on you. So what's next? And he was like, the thing is that yes, everybody's buying this stuff, but in reality, our biggest issue that we don't have enough data, because all those big banks, they are signing up those services. They take a look and they say that, okay, so implementing it actually would require 3 or 4 people. Now those 3 or 4 people are super busy with other stuff, so we're not behind because we already bought, but let's just put it somewhere in a garage and we will deal with this later. We subscribe so we can put the logo here and there, and we are an innovative company, blah blah blah. But 9 out of 10 are never using it. They
Yeah.
just buy and sign up and spend the money, once again from a prestige perspective, but they never actually implement the solution.
And do you think that's because there's more risk averse here? Is that what you're saying?
Partially more risk averse, partially, and excuse my French here, just being lazy. Just
Okay.
being lazy, because with all the innovation, even with ChatGPT, there is a learning curve. Like,
Yeah.
putting there ChatGPT is not going to solve all your problems. You need to communicate, you need to do the prompt engineering. And for many nowadays, and this is going to change in the future dramatically, nowadays it's just really comfortable doing things in the old ways, but pretending that, hey, I signed up to this, so I am doing with AI whatever. But that requires a lot of retraining your stuff, um, reimagining internal processes, not just laying off people, but actually realizing that with AI, those people can do the job of 10 other people.
Mhm.
So you have two options here. Option A, you fire 9 of them and just, appoint one person that, okay, so you're going to do the job of this department. Or option B, you figure out that this extreme free time, what these really smart people have, how I can utilize it in order to run the company 10 times faster. Now, it goes without saying that doing the first one is really easy. Doing the second one, that requires a lot of strategic thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not many people are willing to do it, or not many people are capable of doing it, and that's why they are like, oh, you know what, so we have this AI, so I'm just firing people.
Yeah.
But once again, AI without implementation is just a tool. Like, you have a good film equipment and you are doing a very good
Yeah.
podcast with it, but some people would just make a mess with this film equipment.
Yeah. And I mean, your clients are VCs for the most part, I think, aren't they? And
Yeah.
and how are they responding to that? I mean, you were talking generally there. I mean, are VCs saying this is great? We want to really lean into the way using AI in the context of what we do, or are they perhaps holding back, thinking we'll see what happens? I mean, what's your take on your particular customers sort of group?
My particular customer group, I think, our timing generally on the market, it was really lucky.
Right.
Because there's a thing called the data-driven VC, which started a few years before we started to operate and we started to be active on the market. And back when I was a venture capitalist, I was a big fan of this movement. Basically, the whole point here, without telling you the long story, that the data-driven VC wants to revolutionize how we invest into startups, because
Okay.
you can hear those horror stories when people are spray and praying. They are investing in 10 companies with the perfect knowledge that 9 out of them will be rubbish, but maybe this one is going to be a unicorn, so I can pay back everything to my LPs. Generally, venture capital is not as profitable as people think it is.
Mm.
And possibly this realization gave a lot of fuel to this movement, because those limited partners who are providing almost unlimited funding
Mm.
to the venture capital funds, after 20 years in Silicon Valley, after 20 years in the London ecosystem, they realized that, well, what happened to my money? Where is my money? How on earth it's possible that all those hedge funds and private equity are returning, 20%, 30%, 50% sometimes? Meanwhile, from a VC fund, I think there was a very good article in The Economist that 90% of the VC funds never returned a pound to their investors.
Mm.
And that's why, there's a massive push from the inside of the industry saying that, look, enough is enough. Either you turn into more quantitative, more data-driven,
Mm.
or we're not going to fund your journey just
Mm.
to spray and play with our money. And I think that this was really clever on our end, that we launched in the middle of this revolution. So I think that most of the funds, they are really acceptive, because they understand that they need to be, otherwise they won't get more funding, they
And
won't the
and
market.
your game is giving them the data they need, isn't it? So that one
Absolutely.
would think that they would be responsive. I mean, that's encouraging.
Absolutely, but still, in the early days of the company, we needed to realize that we need to be careful with our messaging,
Yeah.
because whenever you say that, oh, this is an AI solution, inevitably many people, oh, so you're gonna replace me, or what? And you need to calm them down, saying that, look, we're not gonna replace anybody. We just gonna give you data about a layer of information which otherwise would be completely invisible.
Yeah.
That's all what we do. We either confirm or challenge your first impression
Yeah.
about the team.
Yeah.
And we make your life easier, we make your decision making process faster, and generally we make you more data driven.
Yeah.
No replacement here.
Yeah, I mean, picking up your point about being careful, I mean, conventional wisdom is that, if you're a UK company, you're going to go into America. I mean, you spend time doing market
Mm.
research, you develop a market entry strategy, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that's very careful. Nothing wrong with that. What's your take on that process in your context? I mean, is that how you would approach it? If you're going to go into Singapore and you've not been in Singapore, I mean, you do a lot of preparatory work like that. I mean, what's your take on that process? Because although you can see why it's useful, it can also be quite slow. And I know you're in a very fast moving market. I mean, what's your take on that?
I think, we need to separate here two things. What we do, that, I'm sitting in my really comfortable chair. Thank goodness, I come here with the train. I arrived back to my really comfortable chair in Cambridge, and I'm selling to US client
Mm.
as a UK based business. We have no entity in the US. We have a US contract, so we are able to sell. From a data protection standpoint, this is really important. But we don't have an office in Miami. We don't have an office in New York.
Mm.
I think start to sell and start to penetrate the market remotely. You do it as quickly as physically possible by keeping it in mind that you need to have a strong and stable presence in the UK market, because fail fast and fail better.
Mm.
So make a lot of mistakes on a small market, understand how to talk to people, understand how to push those buttons, understand your sales strategy, and after start the so-called mass production in the US remotely. Physically, that's a whole different conversation, and I do agree with the conventional wisdom that if we speak about physically moving your headquarters to the US, that's a bell you don't unring, as they say,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I
It's a
know
big
people.
move, isn't it?
It's a huge move
Yeah.
with a lot of risk, a lot of liability. And I know people, as a matter of fact, in my network, there are 7 people who did this, and they ended up homeless in San Francisco, calling me that, hey, I lost everything, literally everything.
Yeah.
I really want to get back to the UK, and I need money to a flight ticket.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that people have talked to me about, which I think is quite interesting, is partnering as the kind of market entry strategy. So you find a really good partner and you work with them. As you said, you build a base. Let's say here in the UK, you find partners in different jurisdictions and you work with them and you build up your footprint doing that. I mean, is that? I mean, does that work in your context? Do you think that's the way forward, given what you've just said about wanting to keep it, not make massive resource commitments?
I mean, for us, first of all, we are really lucky with our customers because, once again, investors who have the appetite to invest in startups, is a really small international community. The probability, if you are a medium-sized fund in London, that 10 investors who ever co-invested with in the US. That's as a matter of fact, statistically speaking. So my market is really interconnected. So we were really lucky. This was pure luck that I made a couple of powerful people as a satisfied customer in the UK, and they made a very good introductions in the US. I don't think that this is like a general way of doing it. I think that, making good partnerships, having a couple of distributors, there's a whole industry built on it.
Yeah,
However,
yeah,
you need to be very careful, because I know, once again, as a matter of fact, a lot of people who are, oh, I have a flat fee and, I make very good intros, you're going to make such and such money. And guess what? The results are not really meeting with expectations, let's say this way. So the US is a big challenge, and fail to prepare to fail. That's basically what's my take on this. Once again, I'm speaking from a really lucky point of view, because my market was so interconnected that I could get those intros. And whoever is listening us, if you are in this position, follow my blueprint, follow my strategy, because I can tell you it's working. However, if the UK and the US market are completely separate in the case of whatever it can be, I think the best way to build something in the UK which is strong enough that it can finance your journey until
yeah.
you figure out how to
Absolutely.
extend your operations on the US market. And before you sign up any distributors, especially those who are paid ones, always ask for as many references as physically possible, because there are a lot of charlatans out there. A
Yeah.
lot. You have no idea. With UK standards, like 8 out of 10.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've heard other people say the same thing. You've got to be very careful. I mean, to come back to the thing we were talking about at the beginning about the role of the CEO. I mean, I'm presuming that the process of negotiating those deals falls to you as the CEO. I mean, it's another one of those jobs that you've got to do. I mean, what's your approach to negotiating those kind of things? I mean, do you have a way of doing that that works for you?
Well, so there's going to be a little secret here. So I think if we can reach the point that a customer ever tells you that they really want it, but this is just a matter of money, they don't have money at the moment, that's their golden ticket. I love to use this example that, Paul, If I tell you that I can give you a Ferrari for 5K, I think very quickly you could give me that 5K. Uh, I can't give you a Ferrari for 5K. I'm so sorry to let
Especially if it was a big red Ferrari.
you. But if we get to the point that it's the matter of money, all you need to do is just play around with the money. What I love in negotiation, that when we get there, that okay, maybe the annual budget is such and such, so on and so forth, and this is my secret blueprint. Ask for anything media related stuff. Tell them that, look, it's 20% minus if you can give me a testimonial. It's another 20% minus if you can introduce me. I mean, if you're a satisfied customer, you can introduce me 5 other people. Because maybe you compromise on the fees right here and right now, and you don't go home with as much green in your pocket as you want. But in the long term, this is how you build the most important weapon against competitors, your reputation.
Yeah.
There are a lot of cheeky tactics about negotiation in general, how to generate urgency, which is obviously the most important stuff in sales, because you can have the best product if they don't feel the pressure on their shoulder that they need to push the button right here and right now. Well, you're just not going to sell. So there are a lot of stuff which we are playing
Mm.
around, but always know who you are talking to, because if it's a big shark client, someone who can open you 10 doors, make as much compromise to land them as physically possible, because you will thank me later. If it's a small shark with a lot of money, squeeze them. It sounds easier said than done, but my general strategy, that thinking 5 steps ahead, that how much more value I can get
Mm.
by having
Yeah.
your logo
Yeah.
on my website.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that's going through my mind as you're speaking is that it's yet another skill that
Oh yes.
CEOs need to develop, because it's very easy to say. It's more difficult to do those things successfully. They require practice, skills, good relationship, all the rest of it. So it's a really important aspect, really, of the CEO's role. Just let me just I'm just thinking about how we wind this up a little bit. I mean, tell me about what you've. I mean, you've obviously been on a really interesting journey. I mean, brilliant product, great market, working with VCs. I mean, great customers. I mean, what when you look back on those experiences? I mean, what have you learned from it? And in particular, have you had any disasters where you think, I'm really not going to do that again? I mean, what sort of things have you learned from experience?
Well, prior to ETA Technologies, I had a couple of businesses, and I can tell you many funny stories. So, do you want to hear the disasters with ETA, or with my previous entrepreneurial journey?
I'm happy to hear either. I mean, I'm interested in what you've learned, really. That's the lessons that you've learned is the important thing.
So, I had a company which failed because, you know, so this was after my first success with my first company.
Right.
And I think there were 3 lessons there. The biggest one by far, that it doesn't matter whether you had an exit at the first year of your university, you made, I mean, back to those days, I thought that was a decent money. Nowadays, I think that I was a fool selling the company for peanut, but anyway. So it doesn't matter how successful you are in entrepreneurship, always be humble, because the reality is that no one has the holy grail of knowledge. Meanwhile, when you are an electric engineer, there are a lot of successful electric engineers out there. You just need to follow their blueprint, and you will end up as a moderately or really successful electric engineer. Reality is, in entrepreneurship, you always need to start from scratch, and you always need to
Yeah.
be really humble. And my second business purely failed on because I was so much fool in my own head that I made this brilliant exit. I'm the smartest guy around. Whatsoever I touch, I have the Midas hand. It's gonna turn into gold. I don't need people to tell me, this is
Yeah.
a terrible idea. I know what I am doing. I have this instinct in me. Nobody has that. It doesn't exist. That's a myth. So being humble. Number 2, the reason why the second business failed miserably, because we just made all the mistakes. And when I'm saying all, like literally all of them you can think from the
Yeah.
book
Yeah.
regarding the finances, like proper financial mismanagement. So lesson number two, you don't need to be the one-man army. As a CEO, as a founder, your job is not to understand everything what's happening in the company, but your job is to find people who understand and they communicate it to you. The
Yeah.
reason why we had such a financial disaster with the second company, because we had no CFO. We were a couple of college kids together who made a mediocre exit a couple of months back, and we were like, the next Steve Jobs, this is the next Apple computers, we are spending money on this and that, and we ran out, we haven't had the product, so on and so forth. And number three, and this is something which I learned once, I forget that, and I learned again in the hard way,
Okay. I've had a few of them. Yeah.
that how much it matters to solve a real problem. And the real
Mm.
problem starts when your customers are telling you that this is a real problem. It doesn't matter how much you feel a burning desire to give birth to a wonderful technology. If no one is paying for it, if no one asked for it, this is useless. This is a science project. Well done. Publish a paper about it. And time to time, I think I need a lot of failure in my life to remind myself that doing proper market research, understanding your customers, understanding their pain points, reacting to this, solving real problems. This is what the business is about. It's not about bragging with your algorithm and AI. It's not about, trying to force a solution to the market which nobody needs. Yes, Steve Jobs created something which nobody knew that they needed, and he was able to sell it. But don't even, think that you will be Steve Jobs. There is an easy way of doing things, and do it in the easy way. Ask the people, identify the problem, solve that problem as quickly, as efficiently, potentially with AI, and be happy with the money what you're going to make.
Mm. And any particular lessons from ETA technologies? I mean, you talked about, you've obviously had quite a long career. Any particular ones from ETA that relate to the kind of process of going global?
I think, I would iterate back to the different cultures that you can't tell the same joke twice.
Mm.
We had a very good tried and tested sales strategy in the UK. And we went to the US, we needed to start once again being humble from the scratch. Because yes, this is the same problem. So we are pushing the same button, but the whole communication, the style, not to mention the energy, it needs to be different.
Mm.
Just to tell you one really specific example, in the UK, when I'm approaching a customer, I'm creating urgency by telling them that, hey, I give you 24 hours, and you can try the product in 24 hours. You can test maybe one or two of your portfolio companies. You like it, you buy it. You don't like it, you don't buy it, period. In the US, it's just not working because people say that, look, in 24 hours, I don't know where I will be. So you need to give them, instead of 24 hours, you need to give them 2 hours.
Mm.
Uh, and you need to understand that, what urgency means in different markets. And we didn't understand when we went to the US, and we failed with a couple of customers there, that it was like, oh, 24 hours. And guess what? In 24 hours, they completely forget about that.
Yeah.
They were like,
Which is I mean,
many other things.
that's a very interesting point. I mean, to go back to what we were talking about before, I mean, that's about different customer expectations, isn't it? I mean, it's a very minor point that has quite a big impact.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. You
Yeah.
need to understand the culture. You need people to tell you this. And you need to have your own coachability, that when people are telling you this, don't just shut them down and say that, oh, no, no, I know what I'm doing. I know how to sell my product. I'm a genius. But, you need good board advisors who have
Yeah.
10, 20, 25 years experience in a certain market, and telling you that, look, how to avoid the pitfalls.
Yeah.
So this was one thing. And the second one, just interestingly enough, that when we had the first version of the product, we tried it on our own team.
Right.
What is gonna say? And classic hubris once again. Everybody around the table was, we spent 2.5 years developing this amazing product. Obviously, we are a 10 out of 10 team, beyond the shadow of a doubt. And the first time we tested our own team, it was a mediocre score.
Right. Okay.
And
Well.
and we were like, oh, the algorithm is there's something bad here. We put together the system wrongly, and it took a really harsh, like 15 minutes, until we were like, okay, so Let's see what the algorithm says, why we are not a good team. And this is when we realized that there was, without going into much details, there was a massive friction in the communication inside the team. Just to give you once again, specific example, that I love voice messages. I hate texting and writing and
Right,
emails. If
right.
I have a chance, I give you a 5 minutes waffling voice message, and you extract the information in a way you want. From an engineering standpoint, this is a perfect disaster. Yet, because the people started working with me, it was the standard operating procedure. Nobody was like, oh, it's annoying. They thought it's annoying, but they never speak against, because this was the
Okay.
framework.
Yeah, yeah, I get it.
The system revealed it. And this was such a massive failure, because just imagine that we were operating in this way back and forth for 1.5 years.
Yeah,
1.5 years. So that's, I think, the single biggest one, not creating an atmosphere where people were open enough to talk about it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a really interesting point that. Just one last question, if you got a
Please.
few more minutes. Obviously you've been around the loop a few times, had lots of experience, like a lot of entrepreneurs, had to deal with lots of things going wrong and learned lots of lessons. I mean, if you were to give a piece of advice to somebody that was beginning this journey, somebody that sat there thinking, I may be able to take my business into a global context, what would that one piece of, what would that golden nugget of advice be?
I think, it would be actually two tiny advice. The number one, that before you jump global, make sure you're strong local,
Hmm. Good
because
advice.
extending globally is really difficult when you have issues making money on a monthly basis. So make sure that you have a strong and stable enough operations, and don't think about the system as okay, leveling up, and as soon as the final level, the final boss, like in a video game stand, it's like basically the US. Think about it as upgrading the system and as a natural evolution of the company, because the company is not going to be the same as
Hmm.
soon as you extend into multiple territories and multiple countries. So this is number one. And number two, do your research. It's easy to sell from a remote perspective, but still you need to prepare for a different cultural
Yeah,
experience,
yeah,
a different energy. I mean, you need to keep up people with people in the US, because they are so fast, which is great, because you can make 10K deals in 2 days and no more questions. But you need to have the synchrony to mirror their energy, because if you show up as a low energy person, they will be like, oh, why would I buy from this guy? He's low energy. I don't have time for this. And nuances like this.
mm,
Surround yourself with people who understand the market where you're going, if you're lazy enough that you don't want to do the research. And after you've done it, execute accordingly. But
mm.
don't just jump into things, because, fail to prepare, prepare to fail.
Yeah. Very sage advice, Soma. I really appreciate that. Well, first of all, thank you for giving us some time. It sounds like you've had a great, a fascinating journey. Actually, it sounds really good fun that the things that you've been doing, and thank you for taking the time to share those experiences with people. I'm sure people will find them very interesting. And good luck going forward. I mean, I know I know you've got a lot of ambitions, a lot of things that you want to do going forward. So good luck, and maybe come back in a year or two and let us know how you got on.
Definitely, definitely, Paul. Thank you very much for this amazing opportunity, and I'm so glad, if people found it useful. If they have any specific question, they always can find me on LinkedIn, posting, advertising, promoting ETA, and see you in a year's time.
Look forward to it. Cheers, Summer.
Thanks so much.
Bye bye.